This is draft season presented by Moody's. I am John Schmeelk. He is Tony Pauline. Thank you so much for being with us. Episode 3. Happy to be rejoined by my partner Tony here after going solo with Drew Fabianich and Bruce Feldman in our first 2 episodes. I suggest everyone go back and listen to those episodes. Really some good nuggets on the draft class in general and Bruce Feldman's Freaks List, which also ends up being a pretty good preview for the season. Tony, you're vacationed, you're relaxed, you're refreshed. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to be back. Hopefully, we'll do some butt kicking this year. I'm looking forward to the next, 8 months of shows. A lot of information, a lot of film over the summer. As you can see, a lot of sun on my vacation as well. But I'm glad to be back.
Absolutely, and I'm glad to have you with me here. Um, this is probably the biggest week 1 of college football that I've ever seen, Tony. We had 3 games with matchups between top 10 teams, which is awesome. It was a lot of fun, and I think there were some lessons to be learned. And I think the first one would be, without a lot of evidence, beware hypes of names before a season starts. To see guys play a lot of football, and I guess that would be a good place to start with Texas, Ohio State. And look, Arch Manning could end up being an awesome football player, but people were really making a lot out of one game last year, and his tools are great. And again, this is nothing negative about Arch. This is a negative about people covering him and how they talked
Yeah.
about him without seeing a ton of evidence before they started blowing things out of proportion.
And listen, I'm right there with you. And it started at the end of the 2025 draft. I mean, go back and watch our post draft shows. How many mock drafts for 2026 had Arch Manning out there as the number 1 pick for the 2026 draft? And I said at the time, it's insane. All it is a continuation of the Shedeur Sanders hype on the college football level. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it's nothing against Arch Manning, but the hype is having people draw the lines. The Arch Manning lovers and the Arch Manning haters. Just let the guy play, and he didn't play well against Ohio State. There's no doubt about it. You can't shake it out any other way. He was 5 for 10 for 26 yards in the first half. Obviously, the physical skills are there, but he was late on throws. His reads were poor. He was overthrowing receivers. He was missing wide open receivers. The last 3 minutes of the game, he played well, but you're throwing caution to the wind there because they had to score 14 points in the last 3 minutes just to tie the score up. But yeah, there was all this hype and there was this massive letdown from people who believed in him. And it's kind of funny because after the game, I was reading things and the hype went the other way. Oh, he's no good. He stinks. His uncles are so much better. Give it some time. The irony is, I was thinking about this. If you remember Quinn Ewers' first game as a redshirt freshman in Texas, he was destroying Alabama. I mean, he looked like the next coming. He was incredible until he went down with a collarbone injury. So, Arch Manning not only got outplayed by the Ohio State freshman quarterback, he also got outplayed by Quinn Ewers when Quinn Ewers was a redshirt freshman. But it's just one game. Let's see what happens. It wasn't a good game, but it was just one game.
And by the way, against a great team, right? It's not like
Well,
it's not like this game was against some, a like money game against some FCS team that's coming into Texas to get $1 million to play them. And look, Ohio State lost a lot of players. We know that.
right.
But they have Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles is still there. They have some very good players. And
Yep.
it's okay for in the first game of a college season when teams are still getting their footing for a quarterback not to be his sharpest in game number 1. And there could be a dozen more of these games, Tony, for Arch before this season is over if they go into the college football playoffs. And there is going to be a lot more to go off of this. To your point, you saw the athleticism, you saw the arm creativity. On that one last drive, he had that great hold shot between the safety and the corner on the sideline. It was a fantastic throw. But look, it was just a slow start. And it did not go well early, and that's fine. And Arch said it after the game that he needs to play better. But there's a long way to go here for Texas too, and for Arch. Let's see how the rest of this year goes. It's no crime to lose to Ohio State. A lot of players and great players and good teams have lost to Ohio State before.
In Ohio State, in the
Yeah.
shoe, with 107th, and I've been there because my daughter graduated for that, and it's so much fun if you're an Ohio State fan. I mean, if you're a fan of the opposing team, it's a very hostile environment off a team that just won the national championship. So, there's extra hype there, and Arch Manning is coming in. So, yeah, I mean, the cards were stacked against them. The deck was stacked against them. And as you mentioned, all the offseason hype, well, it wasn't on him. It wasn't, he didn't, he wasn't blowing smoke. It was everybody else on the outside. Let's see what happens. Listen, credit to Texas, credit to LSU, which we'll get into, credit to Alabama for going into the hornet's nest of some of these places in week one. When Penn State is playing, Kent State or whoever they were playing, and going in and playing this type of game.
Yeah, absolutely. Who else from Texas, Tony, stood out to you in this game?
You got to like both of their running backs. I mean, C.J. Baxter as a runner, as a pass catcher, as a blocker, redshirt sophomore, he looked really good. Quintrevian Wisner, the other running back. I mean, they got the sort of what Ohio State had last year, with that 1-2 punch with Junkins and Henderson. Wisner's more the game breaker who can run the daylight. He's got the home run hitting speed. Baxter's more of the short interior ball carrier who can also catch. He made some sensational blocks during that game. Avril Reese of Ohio State, 9 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 sack. He's taking over for Cody Simon, who was the brains of that defense last year. He's kind of a Jalen Walker type. And I don't mean as a player. What I mean is when I watched Reese last year, he was more of a situational linebacker who was, who came on the field and was good when he came on the field. Now he's in the starting role. Now he's going to be someone who's relied upon the way Jalen Walker was from 2023 to 2024. Reese isn't the pass rusher, or he's not displayed himself as the pass rusher. He's more of your off-the-ball linebacker, which, Ohio State uses because they rely on that four-man front to get pressure. But he's a guy, he came in the season with 4th-round grades from scouts. I think he's a definite day 2 player. And I think their cornerback, Davidson Igbagnason, who was great 2 years ago, was terrible last year, showed a lot of good things. Still getting called for pass interference for PI penalties, which he's got to really cut that down. But I saw a lot of good things from him compared to last year, which at times was a disaster.
And then, Tony, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Ohio State passing game in this contest. I thought the quarterback looked okay. Jeremiah Smith had a quiet game. He had a couple drops early, but, he's not draft eligible anyway. How about Carnell Tate? He had that really nice play down the field, and I feel like he's going to be another one of these Ohio State wide receivers that's going to try to slide in here to the back end of the first round if everything goes well this year.
I have him more as a day 2 pick. And if you remember Carnell Tate just last year from the college football playoffs, he was a guy that came up big in important situations. Yep. He's more of a stouter possession type of timing receiver, more of an underneath guy, a very reliable pass catcher. He's going to be relied upon the way I talked about the linebacker Reese. Carnell Tate's going to be relied upon now that Emeka Egbuka is in the NFL to play a bigger role. I like Carnell Tate. Could I see him as a late first-round pick? Possibly. I think a lot will depend on his testing numbers. I think he's more early day 2, but he's a legitimate NFL prospect. I would agree with you. And, you mentioned the pass catchers. Let's see what happens with Max Clare. I mean, Max Clare coming into the season, the Purdue transfer, a dynamic move type of tight end, plays their position like a pass catcher, like a receiver more than a tight end, was one of the highest rated senior tight ends coming into the season, had a drop on Saturday, but for the most part, they played relatively well. They had, 130 or 140 yards passing Ohio State on Saturday. Let's see what happens with these guys, with Tate, with Max Clare as the season progresses, as that freshman quarterback, that first-year quarterback really starts to get into the groove of things.
I thought that big Texas tight end looked like he had some promise too, Tony. I think he's a transfer, right?
Yeah, Jack Andrews. I tweeted about him before the game. He's a guy who he's been on my scouting radar for 2 years now since he was a sophomore at California. You could see that big playability, that flash ability to get down the field, and make big plays. I tweeted about him. I said, watch this guy. He is a day 2 prospect, and he was Arch Manning's leading receiver. I think he's going to build that rapport with Arch Manning. He's not going to be the big play receiver that they have on the depth chart right now. But he is a terrific pass catcher. He looks like a good athlete. He plays like a good athlete. Not a bad blocker. But I tweeted about injuries before the game. I really like him.
Absolutely. All right, let's go on to the next game, Tony. Let's go to Alabama and Florida State. Obviously, a big upset here. Ty Simpson, not the best game for Alabama in that contest. And I thought what was more telling is that Florida State ran the ball really well against that Alabama defense, which you don't often see. Your thoughts on the game?
A good Alabama defense at that. I mean, they've got some good linebackers. They got good safeties. They've got a good defensive line. They're pretty. They were supposed to be pretty strong up the middle. Alabama offensively, no Jam Miller, who's a real good running back. He's a middle round choice. No Jaden Roberts, the offensive guard, who's also a middle round choice, potentially a day 2 pick. I think that hurt their offense. That hurt the quarterback.
Their wide receiver wasn't out there either, right? Their big sophomore wide receiver, he wasn't out there either. Am I wrong about
Ryan
that?
Williams. I thought he was, but Jermaine Bernard had 8 receptions for 146 yards. You may be right, but then again, he's a speed receiver, and it was raining like heck that game, so that would have hurt him. I agree with you. The way Florida State was able to push that Alabama defense around the field, and the way Tommy Castellanos, the Boston College transfer, basically had his way, throwing the ball as well as running the ball, was impressive if you're a Florida State fan, and that had to be impressive to scouts. I mean, Castellanos, he's an RPO quarterback, more R for me than I would usually like. But for him to come into a game like that, he's a mouthy guy. He's an outspoken guy. He was at Boston College. You heard what he said about Alabama not having Nick Saban to fall back on leading into this game, which was bulletin board, locker room material that Alabama used. But he backed it up. I mean, he backed it up. He beat Alabama with his arm and with his legs. And if you're a scout, Castellanos has kind of basically been ignored. This is the kind of guy that if he plays like that for the rest of the season, gets an invite to something like the Shrine Game, now all of a sudden you're talking about a potential, possible late round pick. He's small, but he's very athletic. He can make plays in or outside the pocket, make plays with his arms or his legs. Thought he was really good on Saturday against Alabama.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Tony, just a statement win for Florida State. They've been up and down a little bit, and I think that's got to be a win that breeds some confidence for them moving forward. No,
hands down. I mean, you got to think that Norville, the coach, had to get off the get out of the gate hot, or his job was on the line. And what better way to do it against Alabama at home? I mean, now you got to think about the pressure that's on him at Alabama. I think whether you're whether you're Texas, whether you're Alabama, we'll talk about Clemson, you're glad that there's a college football playoff, because a loss like this early in the season would usually devastate the rest of your campaign. But now with the 12-team college football playoffs, you still have another chance.
No, and Tony, you're right. Ryan Williams, five catches, 30 yards in that game. So you're correct about that. That was the one game I did not get to over the weekend as I went through these.
But it was raining, which kind of mitigated his speed.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump over to LSU Clemson. Much like Texas Ohio State, I watched this game front to back here, Tony, and you got a lot of notes here. I want to start with the quarterbacks, though, because these are two guys that have been in the conversation as potential first-round picks. Cade Klubnik has been a guy I've seen talked about as a potential first overall pick. Do you want to start with Nussmeier first or Klubnik? Where do you want to go?
Well, let's go with Klubnik. I think, let's go with the game overall, the theme of the game. I think, number one, LSU's defensive line played much better than anybody expected. And the pressure they were getting, they did run a lot of blitzes. And Clemson's offensive line, which has 3 draftable players, including their left and their right tackle, just seemed lost. I mean, that shocked me to begin with. The next thing that shocked me is Clemson's defensive line has got 3 early picks on it, 2 potential first-round picks, and they were non-existent. I mean, they were basically non-existent. They got no pressure on Nussmeier, and Nussmeier was able to make plays. So I think.
And by the way, Tony, real quick, this is behind an LSU offensive line that lost 3 or 4 starters last year.
Right, including the 2 tackles.
Right.
Including both offensive tackles. Emory Jones, who was a third-round pick, and Campbell, who was the fourth pick of the draft. So, and they replaced the center, who I think is going to be really good. I believe he got hurt. So, yeah, I mean, they were non-existent, and I kind of expected Clemson's defensive line to control the game. Never happened. So I think when you talk about, you talk about that, we talk about Klubnik. He did not look good. The thing about Cade Klubnik is he's a bit like Dylan Gabriel. He's smart. He sees the field. He showed great progress in this game last year, but he doesn't have the great physical skills. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He doesn't have the strongest arm. Most scouts you talk to grade him as a mid-day 3 pick because of the lack of physical skills. But as we saw with Cam Ward and Jaden Daniels, sometimes those mid-day 3 picks or those quarterbacks that get mid-day 3 grades at the beginning of the season turn out to be early first rounders. I think there was a lot of hype, which I bought into on Klubnik based on the development that he saw last year. But I think the fact that, the Clemson offensive line could not slow down the LSU pass rush, plus the fact that Klubnik's not a guy that can rely on his great athleticism to elude defenders or rely on a strong arm to make some difficult throws when he's under the rush, really hurt him. And that's what we saw, excuse me, Saturday night. Never mind the fact that his number one receiver was injured early in the game with a hamstring and really was on the field but was not himself. Williams, who's going to be a first-round pick.
Yes, exactly. And by the way, that was my confusion with the two wide receivers. That was the Williams that was out. Klubnik, I was actually impressed with his mobility. He moved pretty well for me. I thought he showed some athleticism. He had that one really nice move on the sideline where he kind of juked the guy and got out of bounds. But when he threw on the move, Tony, a couple times he was high, especially over the middle of the field early in that game. And for a guy that's going to have to rely on his accuracy, I think, in order to be a really effective quarterback, I thought he was a little inconsistent with that. Going to Nussmeier very quickly, there's something about him where, the tools don't jump off the page where you're wowed by the arm strength, you're wowed by, his athleticism, but he has some creativity, he's accurate, and he just kind of finds a way to find receivers and make plays. And there's something about the way he plays quarterbacks that I like.
He looked like he was always in control.
Yeah.
If you remember Cam Ward a year ago, that opening game when Miami went in and just pounded Florida, you could tell it was a different Cam Ward because he was in control of the poise. Now Nussmeier was on the move a little bit, but you never felt that he was always poised under the rush. You always felt that he was in control, and the vision was fantastic. I mean, he'd be rolling outside the pocket. He'd find the receivers on crossing patterns.
How about that play where he rolled right through back left to the guy coming behind the play? Oh, it was a great throw.
He's finding the underneath receivers. He's finding the safety valves. He's not making bad throws. Going back to your point about Klubnik overthrowing receivers, I think that's also the result of him trying to put extra speed on throws because he doesn't have the big arm. But Nussmeier looked terrific against, a defense that on paper has an outstanding defensive line, has some real good linebackers, and has an outstanding secondary. So you never got, once LSU was able to tie the game, I just got the feeling that Nussmeier was in control of the situation, and it was going to be very tough for Clemson to get back in it.
I thought the LSU wide receivers, and again, they've lost a bunch of guys over the last couple of years, Tony, but I thought the LSU wide receivers look like those guys could develop into some pretty explosive players, which I guess isn't a surprise, given how LSU knows how to produce guys at that position.
Right. Aaron Anderson is a highly rated guy by NFL scouts. He's a smaller guy, but he's exceptionally quick. He separates from defenders, and as you saw Saturday night, he catches the ball very, very well. The other one to keep an eye on is Chris Hilton. He's more of the downfield threat. He's the 4-3 guy, but he's got to really learn to become a pass catcher.
He had a fumble in that game on that screen pass.
And the power forward they have playing at tight end, Trey'Dez Green, he's only a sophomore, but it'll be fun to see his development.
I thought Wade Woodaz looked pretty good for Clemson's defense. The linebacker, I thought he got a couple nice plays, got inside the line of scrimmage. I thought he was very active. I was impressed by him.
I love Wade Woodaz. And if you read my Clemson write-up at Sportskeeda over the summer about it, scouts have a 6-round grade on him. I think he's day 2 material. He's got decent size. He's got solid speed, and he gets it between the ears. He sells out on the blitz. He's a good run defender. He also gets depth on his pass drops. Really a complete 3-down defender. I don't know why they grade him as a day 3 pick, but I think at the end, and there was talk that Wadaz was going to enter the draft last year. So I got a head start on him because I was doing my film work on Clemson earlier this year, getting ready for the 2025 draft. I kept an eye on him in case he entered the draft. Yeah, I really like him a lot.
All right, Tony. Anyone else from this game that really jumped out to you that you think is worth noting?
I thought Mansour Delane, the Virginia Tech cornerback for LSU, played exceptionally well. I mean, he was shutting down his Clemson opponents. I think when Antonio Williams went down, the rest of the Clemson receivers really didn't step up their game. But part of the reason was because Delane played exceptionally well. I've had him on my scouting radar the past 2 years since his sophomore season at Virginia Tech. I have him as a second, third round pick. Scouts have him rated a little bit lower. I'm told there may be concern about his 40 time. He's not a fast guy. I don't see it on film. I don't see him getting beat downfield on film. But Delane is a guy to watch, especially as you get through the SEC schedule. I also thought that
Hey, Tony, real quick,
Terrell,
I had on my notes generally to your point. I thought LSU's corners did not allow those Clemson wide receivers any breathing room, and I think that was another reason why Clemson, I think, struggled a little bit. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, but you're right on. And I think Delane, who I was excited to see at Clemson this year, was one of the main reasons. And Avion Terrell, younger and smaller brother of AJ Terrell, the cornerback from Clemson, I thought he played exceptionally well. The other kid, the freshman, is getting called for penalty after penalty. They stayed away from Terrell, but when they went in his direction, he answered the call. I think he's a top 45 pick. Doesn't have that 6 foot even or taller measurement when he gets on the scale, but he's smart, he's tough, and he's got terrific ball skills.
Yeah, no question about it. And, you mentioned that, LSU's pass rush was kind of after Harold Perkins, who could have came out last year, wasn't for the injury. He's back now, and he was very active.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the pass rush. I mean, he did everything. They mentioned how he was a spy on Cade Klubnik and how even Clemson game planned around him. And Perkins, I'm glad you brought him up. He was all over the place, sideline to sideline, pursuit. Doesn't show any ill effects from that injury from a year ago. He's a smaller guy. He's not an edge rusher. I think he's someone that can play 3 downs. You can use him in space. You can use him in pursuit. But he's tough. He's intense. And he's also smart. And it was great to see him play as well as he did coming off of that injury from a year ago.
Draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony, let's jump to Notre Dame, Miami.
Yeah.
Really an entertaining game on Sunday night. Much like the NFL jumps into Saturdays when college football ends. Before the NFL starts, college football jumping into Sundays before NFL starts running that day. But a fun game. Notre Dame trying to make a run late. They could not quite complete that comeback, a big field goal late for Miami to get them that victory. And it was Carson Beck's debut for the Hurricanes. And they didn't put a ton on his plate, Tony, but he was pretty emotional in the interview after the game. I think he hopes to have, it probably won't be to the same level, but have the same type of success transferring to Miami that Cam Ward had last year.
Listen, I mean, if he played all season last year the way he played on against Notre Dame, he probably enters the NFL draft. I mean, he wasn't great, but it was a major improvement from a year ago. He wasn't throwing ridiculous interceptions early in the game, which put his team in the hole. He got Miami ahead. He was efficient. I was impressed the way he would look around the field. He'd go through his progressions a little bit later than I would like to see, but he wasn't locking on to one receiver as he had the prior 2 years at Georgia. The receivers were holding on to the football as they didn't do at Georgia, which tells you, is there something the way he's delivering the football or what the situation is? Because the receivers at Miami are good, but they weren't as talented as what he had at Georgia last year. I think the only disappointment with Beck was it kind of seemed to take the pedal off his foot off the pedal late in the game and let Notre Dame get back into the game. But then again, Miami seemed content on running the football rather than leaving the ball in Carson Beck's hands. I think overall, was it a spectacular performance? No, but it
It's a
was
good
a
start.
lot. It was much more improved to what we saw basically for most of the season last year at Georgia.
And to me, the story here, Tony, especially late, is the Miami pass rush. And we're going to be talking about Ruben Bain a lot this year. He's a really good pass rusher, a really good player. And I thought that was one of the big differences here, that they could just not block those two outside pass rushers for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, you mentioned Ruben Bain, and he's well known in the Twitter draft world. But Akeem Mesidor, I mean, Akeem Mesidor 2 years ago was highly rated by scouts. He had some injury problems. He really didn't show a lot of progress in his game. He played exceptionally well. Bain is what, number 3, and Mesidor, I believe, is number 4. And Mesidor is quick. He's explosive up the field off the edge. He's got decent size. So Ruben Bain, if he's going to be a top 42 pick, which I believe he will be, I think that Akeem Mesidor, who was graded as a 5th-round pick, has the ability to sneak into day 2. What you saw from Mesidor on Sunday night is not just a one-off type of thing. That's what he showed in 2023 when he was fully healthy. So that's a good sign for Miami. It's a good sign for teams that are looking for pass rushers in the 2026 draft.
Absolutely. And then Jeremiah Love, probably the highest rated player in that game, Tony, in terms of, grades heading into the season. Just had trouble getting going. And I think that's a product of, until teams start respecting what Notre Dame's going to do in the passing game, they're just going to stack the box against Jeremiah Love all year.
Yes and no. I mean, Jeremiah Love is everybody's favorite running back. You remember the game, the Indiana game, when he took it 96 yards, and he has the ability, to break big plays and to take over games. But I'm pulling it up now. If you look at Mesidor, he was kind of hit or miss. Most of the time he would have 100 yards, 91 yards. He's a 12 carry, 14 carry. He's not the guy he's never been the guy that carries the ball 20 times and rushes for 200 yards, a la Ashton Genty a year ago. He's got that home run hitting speed, but it's kind of been up and down. I understand what you're saying about, loading up the box. But even last year, if you look at him, when he was good, he was unstoppable. But there are times with Jeremiah Love where he just disappears. Didn't Sean McDonough talk about it late in the game when he said when they put Love on the field? He goes, "Well, he's finally come out of the witness protection plan because you didn't see him for so long on the field." That's his game. That's got to change for NFL teams to fall in love with him.
All right, Tony, let's go on to the two other games this week that you want to touch on. Auburn, Baylor. What kind of jumped out to you from that game?
Yeah, everybody talks about Keldrick Falk, the incredible Auburn pass rusher who's going to be a top 10 pick. In fact, as we get into it during the season, Auburn probably has 2 top 10 picks. But K'Ron Crawford, graded as a mid day 3 pick, 5th-round area. He had 7 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. He's a real good pass rusher. Think Kyle Kennard. Goes about 6'3", 248 pounds, 4.81 in the 40. Doesn't have those great measurables, but it's just an explosive, intense pass rusher. Keep Crawford on your scouting radar. It was good to see Joey Aguilar, the former Appalachian State quarterback, do what he did at Tennessee, or for Tennessee, I should say, against Syracuse. You remember the whole offseason saga, which happened right around draft time, when Nico Iamaleava was basically dismissed from the Tennessee program. They didn't have a quarterback. Late April, they bring Aguilar in from Appalachian State. Aguilar, in my opinion, is disrespected in the scouting community. He's got decent size. He's always had a good arm. Now he's got a real good quarterback coach. So let's see what happens with him moving forward. Talked about Castellanos before having a good year, then going something like the Shrine Bowl in the offseason. I think Aguilar fits that mold. Talked about.
Hey, look, and Tony, by the way, you just know how great that Tennessee offense is. I mean, you can put quarterbacks in there and they are going to be productive. So absolutely, 100%.
You want another pass rusher to watch? Josh Josephs of Tennessee. Basically played second fiddle to James Pierce last year. Graded as a late day 2 type of player from scouts. Absolutely deserves that grade. I have a solid 3rd-round grade on him. 7 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble against Syracuse. A guy that's got a lot of ability, makes a lot of plays on the football, somebody to keep watch moving forward. 2 last guys I'll mention real quick. Jalen McMurray of Tennessee by way of Temple. Now Tennessee's full-time starting nickelback, made a lot of positive plays on Saturday. Got to mention one guy from Syracuse, California transfer, David Reese. Led the team with 7 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. He was a terrific pass rusher at California before moving to Syracuse. Kind of gets a shoulder shrug from scouts. That's because he's an 8th-year senior. I mean, the guy's going to be pushing 30 soon,
Nah.
but he's a real good football player who makes a lot of plays up front.
Draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Football Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risk into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony. Unfortunately, as great as week 1 on the college football schedule was, weeks 2 and 3, not so great. So the next 2 weeks, Tony's going to go through his offensive preseason rankings next week. We'll do defense the following week. But there are a couple games that you want to talk about coming up in week 2, Tony. What do you got?
Yeah, just from a prospect point of view, Illinois versus Duke. I mean, 2 good mid-tier programs. Illinois' got a pass rusher by the name of Gabe Jackus. He's getting 3rd, 4th-round grades, 13 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. Is he a defensive end, defensive tackle, 6'3", 280 pounds, runs in the low 4.7s, but a guy that's constantly making plays on the football. Watch him versus Brian Parker, Duke's right tackle, a guy that no one talks about, but if you talk to people in the scouting community, they absolutely love Brian Parker. He's probably going to be a guard at the NFL at the next level, maybe center, but he's fundamentally sound. He plays like one of those typical smart Duke offensive linemen, bends his knees, uses angles well. A guy that, and we've seen a lot of good offensive linemen come out of Duke the past half dozen years. Parker's the next guy. Parker of Duke against Gabe Jackus of Illinois is a matchup to watch, a scout matchup to watch on Saturday. And then Troy versus Clemson. I would expect Clemson to go in there and win the game 75-3. But the fact of the matter is, Troy has a receiver by the name of Ra Thomas, who transferred from Georgia. Now, let's go back a year. You had Michael Green, who was, I believe, your first non-Power 4 player to be drafted. Michael Green, the former Virginia player who transferred to a Sunbelt school, came out of Marshall. Now you have Ra Thomas going to Troy. Ra Thomas was highly rated by scouts coming into the 2024 season. He was arrested for, I believe it was, 2nd-degree felony. He was immediately dismissed from the program, didn't play it down for Georgia last year, came to a plea deal with authorities. He's now at Troy. He's going to be the number 1 receiver. Let's see where he's at after missing a full season of football. And he's going to be thrown to the wolves against that Clemson secondary. I mentioned Avion Terrell. They got another kid by the name of Jaden Lucas, who's a terrific corner, has been dealing with some injuries. Khalil Barnes, if you watched the game Sunday night, played well, but he got injured. They're going to be keen on Ra Thomas, who prior to the 2024 season, scouts had him as a 3rd, 4th round type of receiver, the top receiver in that Georgia unit, that Georgia class, which had a lot of good receivers, still has some good receivers. But this is a big rebound game against the talented Clemson secondary for Thomas.
All right, Tony, we'll do this a lot more next week, but just before we say goodbye, give fans a little preview of what you think this draft class looks like and what we'll be talking about over the next 2 weeks, just in terms of where the strengths and weaknesses are, and just kind of what the basic character of this class is going to be as we talk about it over the next 7-8 months.
I like, and we'll get, like you said, we'll get into this more next week. I kind of like the potential at the quarterback position. You mentioned Cade Klubnik. Next week, I'm going to be talking a lot about Lenora Sellers, the quarterback from South Carolina. Should be a good edge rushing class. Keldrick Falk of Auburn, Overton of Alabama, Kelly of Central Florida. I mean, these are all guys that are good pass rushers. I think it's a real good off-ball linebacker class. You mentioned Harold Perkins, Anthony Hill, who was kind of up and down, the junior from Texas, who's an explosive player. I think, we'll have to wait and see, but it could be a good running back class as well. Mentioned Jeremiah Love. Penn State's got a pair of running backs that are real good players. There's some other ball carriers late in day 2 that could have an impact. Darius Taylor of Minnesota. And the offensive tackle class has got a lot of potential. I'm looking at my board right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 offensive tackles with first or second round grades. So that's something else we'll talk about at length.
We'll have a long conversation about the offense next week, defense the following week. And we'll, of course, review everything that happened in college football over the weekend as well. And then things really start to pick up with conference play in week number 4, and we'll start getting to that, have some guests on. It'll be a fun year, Tony. I'm thrilled to be back with you. Thanks for being with me again, and we'll talk soon.
Look forward to it, John.
That's Draft Season presented by Moody's, a proud sponsor of the New York Football Giants. For Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda, check out all his work there. I am John Schmeelk. We will see you guys next time.